Croz Crossley, the mindset technician. This interview was recorded on the 18th of September 2013. It was lost for a decade and has now been found, and I'm presenting you here today. It's a fantastic interview full of insightful nuggets of information from Croz in his inimitable style. Today, maybe we would call this a podcast. 10 years ago, I called it an interview. I hope you enjoy. So today I'm really excited to have in the studio with me someone who knows about the science of getting rich more than I do. Used to run the biggest science of getting rich website in the world. Has talked about it in countries from Thailand to Australia to this country. In fact, Croz has just come from Australia to England, and I'm delighted to be in the studio recording some thoughts. With Croz. Croz, hi. Awesome.
Great to be here. And, it's nice to finally meet you after conversing over the cyberspace. So it's really interesting.
Croz, I want to ask you, what's the biggest takeaway, the overall encompassing single biggest piece of advice that you can give?
However much is written, and whatever's done in the world of self-development or advancement or enlightenment or whatever, the thing that I've experienced that always works is to know where you're going, that being the goal. If you know where you're going, if you get pushed off course occasionally, you know how to get back en route. But if you're just a free spirit flopping about, you'll never get anywhere. So I think the biggest nugget that I've got is know where you're going. And as Wallace says in the book, you don't only know where you're going, but you're feeling and living that now. And if I can just say a little thing that I do in my talks is people say, well, how can you think about something and be living it? How do you experience that? And I say, well, we do it all the time. When we book a holiday, you don't start enjoying the holiday when you actually get on the plane. As soon as you've booked it, your mind wanders to the hotel, lying on the beach, meeting new friends. So you are experiencing a vision before you're actually doing it. So that is a great thing to remember. When you're actually visualizing something, just imagine that it's the same as a holiday, and then you can start living it. Once you start living it, it's great, because the great thing is about thinking of your holiday, you very rarely lie there trying to get to sleep thinking of it raining or getting run over or something going wrong. The great thing is that you are actually putting into your vision good things. So that would be my main nugget. Get a vision and get the ability to live it, because everything else then will suddenly fall into place. The thing is that anything that you want and you truly want, and I say it must be a desire, because the difference between want and desire, make a note and we'll talk about that later, because that's a whole new thing on its own, is differentiating between want and desire. But what you do is, once you've got this vision and you don't need any help to think about it, so you know when your goal, when your vision is really working, is because you don't need to set time aside to think about it. It's there all the time, and it may be subliminal, it may be to the front, but all the time you're surrounding yourself with what you want. Then that's just a very, very simple example of how clarity of your goal works, because all the time little bits get added, and there's examples of people actually performing major operations or building things where they've never actually done it. In fact, they say that I think Leonardo da Vinci or someone like that actually could go and build something because he'd done it so many times in his mind that when he came to do it, he was doing it for the second, third, fourth or fifth time. And all the things that he visualised that could go wrong, he avoided when he actually did it. So it's a very, very powerful thing to let your mind wander, but it can only actually tune in once you know what you want. And as I say, I was going to say the difference between want and desire is that that is an important thing, because a lot of people, they don't focus because want is, yeah, that'll be handy. Oh yeah, I could do with one of those. That's a want. Or, do you want this? Yeah, all right. If you desire something, it's possibly, let's just say that you were a collector. Let's say you were a collector of model cars and you were walking past a shop, and in that shop window was a car that you'd been looking for 20 years. It was impossible to get hold of, and you looked in that window and there it was. Would you be able to walk on up the road?
Sure, no.
That is a desire, because you would make sure, and whatever it took to get that, you would do it. Whether it was too much money at the time, it would go on lay-by or whatever, and you would have made sure you got it. That's the difference between want and desire. If you'd have walked past the same shop window with hundreds of model cars in it, and there was some that you didn't have, but they weren't this elusive one that you really desired, you could walk past. You say, oh, yeah, that'd be nice to have, but it wouldn't be a desire. So that is the difference. So you've got to have that thing of saying, I'm not going to walk away from this. And if you start a business or anything like that, if you've got the desire to make it work, that's the lock-in. That is the trigger, that desire.
What about people who maybe have lost their way a little bit? They're doing something and they kind of maybe feel a little bit trapped by circumstances that they're in.
Well, Wallace is quite clear. And that's actually taking it a little bit away from focus or vision. That's a circumstance that you find yourself in, because Wallace makes it quite clear in the Science of Getting Rich. It doesn't matter where you start. Once you put all the pieces in and you line them up, you can't fail. But the first thing with a situation where you're in a job that you don't like, it's very, very simple. I actually mentored a man who worked in a bank in America 10 or 12 years ago now. And funnily enough, he just made contact with me this morning, which is the most amazing thing, which has reminded me of the story. But he contacted me to mentor him. And he was working in the bank and he hated it. And I just said to him, Jack, you cannot move on if you're trying to escape. Moving on has got to evolve. So the first thing you've got to do is fall in love with where you are. However difficult it is, but you've got to fall in love with where you are. Then you more than fill your space. If you more than fill your space, two things can happen. You've either get seen by someone else in a similar situation who looks at you and values what you're doing, and they will ask you to move on with them, or you get seen within your organisation as someone that is great value, and things will start changing. So the main thing to do when you actually feel that you're stuck and you hate what you're doing, you've got to start loving what you're doing. Because that's the trigger for the evolution. Well, what happened to Jack is that he started enjoying, and instead of getting up in the morning and hating going to work, he said, okay. So he reconfigured what he was doing in his mind. Because the thing is, you know, the mind's very powerful and it can make something nice be horrible very easily. You give the right information and it will just make that thing horrible. So Jack made the bank his friend. And he went there and he started dealing with people and he started talking to them and having a laugh, and his whole demeanour changed. Well, after a couple of months, everyone who came to the bank, there was a big queue at Jack's desk and no one at the other desk. So they just wanted to be around Jack because Jack was smiling and laughing and joking. Well, to cut a long story short, Jack didn't leave the bank. Jack became the manager of the bank in very short time, because they started looking at him and realising what he was doing. And the reason he hated the bank was because he thought there was no promotional prospects at the bank. But once he had changed his attitude, all of a sudden the promotional situation changed, because he'd changed. So the first thing you've got to do is change how you're thinking about it, because then that will put the signals out to everyone else that you are a different person. And the latest news that I've got today is Jack is now in charge of 6 banks. So he's a general manager for 6 banks. So, and he loves it because he's changed his attitude to where he is. And it's all very easy to just every morning get up and think, oh God, another day, another. That's the wrong attitude. You can change that so simple by just changing how you look at it. And that's the secret of getting out of a situation that you don't like. But never try and escape, because that will never work, because all you're doing is taking your misery to another place, if that makes sense. You've got to go, so it's all got to evolve. And that's the same as when you get a goal. If you're in business and you get a goal, things miraculously will start laying themselves in front of you, because before they made no sense, but when you know where you're going, it's like driving along a road and seeing the signpost to your destination. You say, yep, turn right here. And those signposts come up just with regular situations. They just keep coming up. And it's a marvellous feeling, but you've got to be in control of how you feel about it to kickstart it.
There's somebody that works in one of the local coffee shops near me who is that smiley, chatty, engaging person. His real passion is makeup. He ended up, just through being chatty, just enjoying conversing with the customers, ended up getting a contract to do all the makeup for the play at the local theatre. They've engaged him again, and his portfolio now is growing. He's been doing some sci-fi makeup, and it just all came from having that positive outlook.
And talking, because if you know where you're going, you can talk to people, and you never know. I mean, there's the 6 points of separation, you know. Yeah. There's a theory that we're only 6 points away from 6 moves away from anyone on Earth.
Sure, yeah.
So you never know who you're talking to. And you see, the thing is that once you're positive, once that guy's telling you he wants to do makeup, it may not be you, but you might be talking later to someone who's producing the local thing. Does that make sense? So if he was a miserable bastard, you wouldn't pass on any information. But it's that guy down the coffee shop, he's a nice fellow. So his attitude is dead right. He's not trying to escape anything, but he's talking about it, and he's got his vision, and that's enabled him to talk about it rather than saying, oh, I ain't working here, so I have to do this, that. So he's all positive. You get attracted to him, and the information goes, and that is exactly how it works. And it's not mystical or spiritual or whatever. It's a law. It's a law of evolution, and it's so simple if you just do the right things. It's just a case of pressing the right buttons, and that's a very, very simple way to start. It's just be positive. And if you want change, that guy was visualizing himself in the new position, and that's what happened. So most people, or a lot of people, they actually create things to justify how they feel, if that makes sense. Is if things are going wrong, it's everyone else's fault.
Sure,
it's never your fault. Well, the unfortunate thing is, every time it is, you are in total control, and it's how you think about the information that you're given. And what happened to my client was that he made that play. He knew where he was isn't where he wanted to be. So that's as big a goal as knowing where you want to go. Because you've got to change that first. As I say, you've got to make everything right. Once you're at peace with yourself, however much he hated going there. He just loathed it. He was beside himself he just hated it. But just through talking, I said, Jack, you've got to love it. Because if you don't, you can't move on. You can't take that bad feeling with you. And that's not going to launch anything. That's only going to launch more bad feelings. And as soon as he changed his mind, as soon as he changed his attitude, very, very quickly, things started turning round. And guess what? He loves the bank now. So it was only how he was looking at what he was doing, and the reason he wasn't getting any looked at for promotion is because he didn't deserve it, because he didn't like the bank. So why would the bank possibly be on his side if he wasn't showing any? So it's that easy. It's that easy really to change your attitude. And once you change your attitude, everything changes.
How quickly did things change for Jack?
Within 2 months, he was all of a sudden loving it. And then I think within 4 months, he had had promotion on the way. Now, once that situation happened, he knew that his vision of there being no promotion here and his everyday going to this place that he hated changed. And he knew there was a chance of promotion. So then he could latch on to his thoughts of being a manager and then putting his thoughts back into the bank. And the reason that he got made in charge of all the other banks is because he had happy banks, if that makes sense. Because he understood the reasons of people sitting there moping about. He wasn't happy with that. So he had the ability to make them think better thoughts. So the whole place was a happy place. And you know, a lot of banks you go in there, they're not places to make you laugh and smile, are they? They're miserable places. But he had happy banks. And as I say, now he's in charge of 6. His future's secure because you make a path for yourself in the bank and you get looked after with pensions and what have you. So he's very happy and actually enjoying what he's doing. So.
And I guess that's also then transferred over to the other aspects of his life outside of work.
Well, the family, it's just lovely. I mean, that's one of the things that I got through today was a picture of him. They were very young children when we first met. They're now teenagers, and it's just great. He's got all the time in the world to go with them. You know, to go to their sports days, and he takes time off when he wants it because the bank is so, you know, they allow him to really set his own agendas. You know. So, and he doesn't have to sort of kid to them or lie about where he is. He says, I'm going to the kids' sports day today. And it's no problem, Jack. So it's great. But it is an attitude. And now it's a natural thing. Where when he first did it, and this is, we're going back sort of, I think, 9 or 10 years now. When he first did it, it was unnatural because he hated the bank. So all of a sudden, but it's just a lovely story, and it's just so funny that he contacted me today, which is, you know, uncanny, really.
Yeah.
But are we surprised?
Yeah. Like attracts like. People that walk around moaning all the time are not going to befriend positive, upbeat people. If they do, not for very long. What small little things would you recommend to do?
Well, I'm a great believer. I do a gratitude list. I don't write it down, but my wife and I, we go walking every morning, and every day we feed the ducks and the swans down on the river there, and that is a fantastic way to start the day. And it's just taking on mammoth proportion now because it's almost as if they're waiting and they're all on the banks opposite, and we throw the first bit of bread in, and then all of a sudden you hear the noise, the cacophony, and it all coming in, and that actually activates my gratitudes because I think we've got 4 or 5 slices of bread here, but aren't we having a bit of value out of it with all this happening? And you think, well, that's it, you know, that starts me then, and then we walk on from there. And then we talk our gratitudes to each other. And it's not a case of looking to find someone who's worse off than you or someone who's got bigger problems than you. You should never, ever use that as your gratitude because that's not what it's about. You can have your sympathies for them and whatever but you should never be thankful that you're better off than someone or you haven't got someone in the family who's ill. So my gratitudes are normally about, well, you know, the main one we always kick it off with, aren't we lucky? Look at what value we're getting out of. So thankful that 4 slices of bread can start my day so beautifully. And then we go on and we start talking about, you know, the trees are now changing their colour. It's coming into autumn, so that's a gratitude. Thanks very much for that. The you know, things that have happened in the previous week or whatever, we can be thankful for that. So it's a case of don't worry what you're thankful for, just be thankful, because I always say that gratitude is the power cord. If you're not grateful, That's one of the main bits. And once you're grateful, you plug into the energy, you plug into source once you're grateful, because it's the universe tends to come back and say, well, thanks for noticing that, that's great, thanks a lot. And you feel good about yourself, and you start off the day on such a high note, and it's just amazing. So you don't have to have any set thing, just be thankful for everything. If you catch every green light on the way to work, that's great. Be thankful for everything, because that's what it's all about.
If you look for things that are going wrong, you'll find them.
Yeah.
If you look for things to be happy about, look for things to be grateful for, you'll find them. Yeah. And like you say, the universe will present you with more opportunities to notice them, to find them, and to have even more of those.
And the thing is that, I think that your listeners, they should understand that there is no special, how can I say, there's no special rules or things for doing this. To make your life change, you must change. That is the bottom line, because it's no use you trying to it was like trying to run a petrol car, and put diesel in it. You're not going anywhere. You've got to make sure you get the highest octane fuel you can get, bung it in, and off you go. So what they need to do, if there are people out there that have read The Science of Getting Rich and now having trouble making sense of it or making it work. I mean, that new book that you've just done, that How to Promote Yourself, Making the Man Who Can, I mean, that's fabulous, because that's like a, how can I say, a refresher course of The Science of Getting Rich. That's just fantastic, it's got all the bits and pieces in it, but it's so, I mean, you can read it in half an hour, and that's fantastic. So if you're not getting results from The Science of Getting Rich, then unfortunately they are the problem. So once they start, buying into the fact of having the goal, making sure that they're happy where they are, get their gratitude going, things will start changing. More than fill your space. If you're unhappy at work, more than fill your space. Just keep moving on. I mean, I've got a client in Australia that was a teenage mother. She had a child at 14. By the time she was 18, she had 3 children, and she was in an abusive relationship. And all of a sudden, the powers that be were going to take her children off her if she didn't leave the husband and, sort herself out. So she decided to, and she started, studying bits and pieces, but very, very, very focused on what she's doing. And she's now just been, and I think she's about 30 years old now, and she has just been nominated for Businesswoman of the Year in Australia.
Wow.
And, she's getting clients like Coles, BHP, and all that, purely and simply because she just knows that it's possible now. Do you understand what I'm saying? She knows that it's possible. But she also knows that you can't, it's like joining a gym and going along there and paying your money and expecting the bloke at the gym to do the press-ups for you. They ain't going to help you. The press-ups he does aren't going to help you. But so many people buy a book and say, well, what else does it do? You have got to take control, take the action, take the inspired action, and things happen. And, unfortunately, like people, they read The Science of Getting Rich and they either buy into it or they don't buy into it. But the thing is that once you actually follow what it says in there, you can't fail. And I've proved it on so many occasions. In fact, I've said to clients, I can't work with you anymore, because they'll come back after we've had our chat, and they come back maybe halfway through the next week, and I say, did you do, no, well, I'm going to do that tomorrow, or I'm going to do this. So they're not committed. So it's pointless me putting any energy into them, because the energy's just dropping dead. It goes into them. Now, if you give someone some energy and they go and use it and come back and say, I did that, I did it and it went wrong. No problem. You did it. So it shows that you've made that commitment. But most people, or a lot of people, are their own worst enemy because they don't actually push themselves to do what they've got to do. And look, this is something that's tangible, that you've got to actually take and run with it. And you've got to actually put in the effort. Because there's no way of getting from A to B if you're not going to put one foot in front of the other. If you buy a book that says how to get from A to B, and you read it, you don't move anywhere, do you?
No.
But you start walking and following the instructions in the book, and you end up at B, and that's it. The basic thing is you've got to put your effort in. Forget everything else. Start putting one foot in front of the other, and it ain't going to happen straight away. It's not going to happen like in minutes and overnight, but things will start changing. You'll notice things that we used to call coincidences. There's no coincidences. You've just observed something that was there all the time, but now it makes sense because you know where you're going. But if you don't know where you're going, I mean, if you're trying to get around Perth, or you're trying to get around London with a map of Edinburgh, how far are you going to get? Hey?
Yeah.
So that's it. So get your map. Make sure you're looking at the right map, and that's it. And if you go off course, all of a sudden it doesn't matter. If you know where you're going, you can always get back on course. If you don't know where you're going, you're always off course. Every road is a dead end. So that's the thing. Get clear, and we come back again to
the vision
and the goal. But you ain't going to get anywhere near the vision or the goal if you don't start taking action. So it's all becoming clear now. The vision and the goal. Live it, believe it, know that you're going to get there. Start taking action. Be grateful for what's happening. Be grateful. And once you start looking at what's happened during the day, you'll notice these things that used to be called coincidences happen a lot more frequently than what they used to, because they're making sense. Wallace says in The Science of Getting Rich, and I know this to be true, don't confuse yourself, because most people, as you can see on my shelves, I've got an awful lot of books, but when I actually bought into The Science of Getting Rich, I don't mind which one you buy into, because basically the message is the same. People are just wrapping it up differently. And you know a book where someone's experienced what they've done and written about it, or someone has just read a lot of books and then written something else, because you can pick up on that. But don't get confused. Study in isolation. If you choose The Science of Getting Rich, study it in isolation until you make it work for you. Then read all the books you want. But don't read The Science of Getting Rich and then start reading another book and another book, because what you'll be doing is you'll be trying to say, now, oh, hang on a bit, I'll take that bit from that book and this bit from that book. And all of a sudden, once again, it doesn't make any sense. So just take one book. And as I say, if it's The Science of Getting Rich, good on you, because that's been very powerful in my life. It got me out of a lot of trouble, and that's a story for another day. But it's been very powerful in my life. Stick to the one book until it works for you. And then once it works and you've got faith and belief in the contents of it, you can read other books, because a lot of it will make sense. I mean, I've read a lot of stuff from the New Age era in the early 1900s that was from America and England and all over. And I think it's William Dorr lectures. It just clarified everything that Wallace was saying, because there were certain bits of it that I didn't understand, you know, like the thinking substance. I could never ever work out the thinking substance, that everything was first a thought, but that clarified it so much for me. But I couldn't have read that in tandem with The Science of Getting Rich. But now I look back, because all these New Age thinkers at the time, they were basically, you know, there was very little to choose between any of them. They just had different ways of doing their message. So that's a very important point. Make sure you stick to one book. And your hypnosis Science of Getting Rich thing is fabulous. I mean, what a great innovation that was. It's just marvellous. And that really does take you to another place, because I've never done that meditation or hypnosis or subliminal messages or anything like that, and I really enjoyed that. It was a great buzz, and it, you know, sometimes in that there was clarification came to me from that. So you see, once you're actually aware that this works, then you can go into all these different bits and enjoy them more fully than you would before. Because if you take anything in isolation, it doesn't make any sense, you know. If you get one part of a internal combustion engine, it don't make any sense to you. But when you've got all the other parts, you say, that's the key bit, and you screw it on, and that's great. So, you know, please, please, please make your decision to just stick with one book, all the people out there, because that will really accelerate things. And I know how easy it is when you get the new email through with the next big whiz-bang thing that's going to change the world and do this. But I've been around a long, long time, and at the end of the day, you've got to put your bit of effort in, you've got to put your faith into one message, and then things will start working for you.
So how often would you recommend studying the Science Rich daily, reading a chapter or chapters a day?
I would have read The Science of Getting Rich over 100 times. And every time I read it, a new message comes to me. I read a chapter a day at least. And I don't know if that's habit now or whether I just want to, I don't know, but I thoroughly enjoy it. And it's just great. And that book you just given me today, the Making the Man Who Can, that was, that to me, as I said earlier, is just a synopsis of The Science of Getting Rich. There's a lot of bits in there, but that, if you've read The Science of Getting Rich and then you get this, and this thing would fit in your handbag or your pocket anyway and carry it around with you. I mean, you know, forget all the computer bits and the phones with all the different bits on it. There's nothing better than a good old book, John, is there?
I totally agree.
You're sitting there looking at it and reading it, and this is a fantastic thing. Well done for finding that and publishing that again, because that is brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah. In fact, the 365 shuffle, something I set up a couple of years ago, was, and I used a random number generator and give them a link to a different chapter from The Science of Getting Rich. So, presuming you've already read or listened to The Science of Getting Rich a number of times, each day a random and totally pure random chapter from The Science of Getting Rich would come to your email. You click a link and you listen to it on your phone or on your way to work, and it was just that idea to make it just a little bit more simple for people just to input that information on a daily basis. But I agree, I keep a copy of The Science of Getting Rich by my bed, and I read a chapter sometimes in the morning, sometimes at night, and I've got another copy, that I'll read sometimes during the day. I continue to find new information in it.
Well, as things happen, your mind changes, because every time you get what we call an aha moment, I don't know what you call them with your people, but that's just when you say, oh, it's something new. But every time that you get one of those, everything else changes, because it puts everything else into a different perspective. And so all the time that you read in the book, you're reading it again and again, and you get the aha moments, it's because you've actually changed your view yourself. So you're actually perceiving it differently. So that's another very, very interesting thing of how things actually roll along and change. Most aha moments come for people that are left to do something that they think they can't do, if that makes sense. Like, you leave a business in the hands of someone else, right? And you say, oh, look after the business for us. And a classic example was actually Val's brother. Bless him, he's gone now, but what a wonderful man. We left a business with him, and he made it run so much better than we did. We left him for 2 weeks, and when we come back, there was new systems in place because he'd come from a different world. He was a very senior manager at London Airport and hated it. Once again, he come and said, what would I suggest he do? And he actually wasn't a self-employed makeup, if that makes sense. He really was a managerial type person of a huge operation. That was his expertise, but he didn't like what he was doing. And once again, he said, I can either get a promotion here, or I can move to the side going down the bit that I want to do. My suggestion to him was move to the side and go down the bit you want to do. And very, very quickly, he went to the side and did the bit he wanted to do, and he overtook what he would have done as a promotion so quickly, purely and simply because it was what he wanted to do. So that's a classic example of, following your desire. He didn't like it, and it was money. He said, I'm not going to get any more money, but I've got a chance to get doing what I want to do, and bump. And that made all the difference to his attitude. But what I'm saying is that he came into our business with that knowledge of big business management, and we came back and there was systems in place. He took more money, he'd done this, and it was just amazing. But he didn't know he had the ability to do that. But you tend to puff yourself up, because I don't want to let these people down, and I want to do the best I can, and all things come into play that you didn't know you had. Does that make sense? But once you see, all the time you've got someone you can lean on, and that's why mentoring's such a very finely tuned thing, because people tend to start leaning on the mentor far too much. They should be in an advisory capacity, not a support capacity, because once you become a support, people tend to, the natural thing is to just rely on that. Oh, if I make a mistake, that's why I can go and ring so and so and get the answer to that. Well, that don't project you forward. Where's the answer? And then take the action to get to the next place. That's the secret. Don't rely on that. But once anyone's left in a situation, that we all do it. We all want to do the best we can. And when you're put in a position where it's a position that you wouldn't normally be in, that's when the good stuff comes out. That's when the juices really start flowing, because there's no one to say you can't do it, because you've been asked to do it. So they must think you can do it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it's all this mental thing in your head. And once you start understanding what control you've got over your mind and your life, everything changes, because you can do whatever you want to do or desire to do, and you've got in you the ability to do anything that anyone else can do. You may not know how to do Pythagoras' theorem, you may not know how to do all these other funny things, but things that are just logical. And in management situations, once you've got to do it, you make the choice and do it. And you know the great thing? If you fail, guess what? You learn.
Sure.
So failure is actually the stepping stones to success, because no one has become a success without making loads of failures. So don't worry about failing, because when you start failing, you know you're on your way. Because if you don't fail, you ain't trying.
Defeat may serve as well as victory to shake the soul and let the glory out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Learn from those mistakes.
Precisely. And if making mistakes and learning from them is the way to wisdom, I could possibly be the wisest person you're ever going to meet, because I've made every mistake, and I've learned from every one of them, and that's what makes the information so powerful. Because people say to me, "Oh, well, it's all right for you." Yeah, it's all right for me because I'm making it work for me. But don't think someone talks to me about anything, I can actually find a thing in my life that's worse than anything they can tell me about. waking up one morning and finding out that you've lost a business worth $500,000 that was taken from you by someone that you had brought along and had round your house at Christmas only weeks before as a guest of yours, and that you had no secrets from, and you taught him everything he knows, and you wake up one morning and he's actually gone and white-handed you and nicked the business. That takes some coming to terms with. And then moving on a few years later, dragging that problem round with me for years and years and years, and we'll make another thing on forgiveness, we'll do another tape on forgiveness later, but dragging that information round, that problem round with me for years and stopping me doing everything else, because my mind was locked in to beating the crap out of him or getting him back. But I wasn't concentrating, I'd lost my vision. My vision now was to hurt him, so it was disrupting everything. And then one day, I forgave him. Not just said, oh, I forgive you. Forgave him. Made it to a point where I said, I don't care, okay? You did that, I forgive you. And do you know what happened? That exact minute, things changed. Why? Because my mind had changed. I'd now refocused, I'd forgiven him. I wasn't spending days on him trying to work out how to disrupt his life that was in the end disrupting my life. I forgave him. And do you know what? The feeling, the cleansing progress of actually truly forgiving that man was unbelievable. It was as if I'd been cured of cancer. And things changed in my life so dramatically. One of the main things that I teach people today is clean up all the people, all the things in your background. Forgive. But anyone who you hate or whatever, you don't want them in your life anyway. But forgive them. And proof that I'd forgiven him was years and years later. We bumped into him, my wife and I. But the sad thing was that all the time that I hated him, I had wished some terrible things on him. I wished he'd get cancer. I wished that his marriage would break up. I wished that he'd lose the business. I wished that things would go wrong in his life. And guess what? When we bumped into him, he was a very sorry state because he'd lost the business. He'd had testicular cancer. He found his wife in bed with his best friend, and he lost his house. He was skint. Now, one of the reasons he was skint was because when the business went rocky and he fell back a step, guess what? He hadn't made the mistakes that got me to the position of the business, so he was lost, he was floundering. When things started going wrong, then he fell back to the step below, and then the step below, and then the step below. So every one of those steps was where I had made my failure and learn. Do you understand? So you can't go from 0 to 100 in one jump, which is what he did, because he stole the business. He didn't know the secrets of holding it together. He thought he knew everything, but he didn't. And the minute he started falling and started floundering, he went that to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. And that's unfortunately, so you've got to actually make the mistakes to learn from, because that's your power. That's your protection, really, because anyone who wants to chase you legally without stealing the business would have to go through those same mistakes. So that's a nice little story about the power of forgiveness and refocusing your mind, because so many people are going around and they've got in their mind, they've got so much junk going on. What they're trying to do, they're trying to deal with, oh, I hate that teacher at the school for my kids, I'm going to get up there and sort her out. And that bloke that I saw in the traffic this morning, I'll get him, if I get hold of him, I'll sort him out. And your mind's got so much crap in it that immediately that's not important. Revenge isn't important, right? Just clear your mind. And the thing is, the more relaxed you are, the easier life becomes. And it doesn't matter what turmoils are going on around you. I annoy the crap out of Al sometimes because there's something that she really has got excited about, and I go, and she says, why ain't you done? I said, well, because it doesn't matter. It's gone. It's in its past, or I'll sort it out as I go. But providing you remain relaxed, good decisions will come. Because it's impossible to make the right decision if you're stressed.
The fluidity of the thought disappears, doesn't it, in those situations?
Because once again, because you're making decisions to, if you're stressed, you're making maybe revengeful decisions. They might be decisions because you've got your back against the wall, and they might be about expecting to go from 0 to 100 in one jump, so these decisions. But once you're relaxed, things change. And the tip is to anyone who's in a situation where they've got a decision to make and they are stressed, go to someone who you trust, who's not stressed. And the funny thing is, what they tell you to do might totally conflict with what you want to do, but it'll be the right decision because it's coming from a position of non-involvement and stress-free. So there's another little bit of advice. So you're getting a few little bits and pieces happening here today, John?
I think, personally, I'm getting lots of bits and pieces going on. And I hope everyone who's listened to this is going to get as many or more amazing ideas or resolutions. But I absolutely resonate with what you're saying. And if you step in a puddle and you get a wet foot and you're on your way out somewhere for the rest of the day, you've got a wet foot.
Yeah.
You can be stressed about that. You can release all the neurotoxins into your body, poison your body, have a go at the people you shouldn't have it, and be in that stressy situation. Or you can have a wet foot and have a happy disposition.
Well, I'll tell you what, John. I wrote an ebook 10 years ago called "If You Can Drive a Car, You Can Change Your Mindset." Right? Now that little bit that we've been talking about there, okay, that's covered quite extensively in that little ebook. So anyone listening to this who wants to email you or contact you via your website, I give you full permission to give them a free copy of that book. All right? So you better tell the people your website or your email address now, and then they just contact you from reading it. Don't matter where you listen to it or how you hear it, you can have a free copy of that book, and it's got lovely illustrations in it, and it's a lovely little read, very simple. And as in most of the things I do, I bring it down to basic things of, like the internal combustion engine, a car. We can all identify with driving a car, and it's really great. At the end of the book, you will be able to change your mindset very, very quick. Giving is the first part of receiving.
Sure.
Another little nugget.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot give anything away without somehow there is something happens as a result of that which benefits you. And it doesn't matter when, how, where, what, why, something will happen. The ripples go out. It's like dropping a pebble. Giving someone something is dropping a pebble into a very still pond, and the ripples just keep going out and out and out and out. You never know where they're going to come, but some good will come out of the giving, and as a result it will trigger receiving something for you. And
I think, to be honest, that's part of the reason why we're doing this today, right now. We're giving, and the science of getting rich and Wallace Wattles' ideas, we're giving that information a bigger platform, and spreading those ideas to people who can take it, run with it, and ultimately that affects us back again, because the world becomes a nicer, better place, and the people that you deal with are all...
Well, it's the information, John. You see, like rich is the connotation of rich. I remember when £100 used to be a fortune to me. Fortunately, now it doesn't represent very much at all, but to a lot of people it still does. And that's the thing, is so that don't let people get confused of what rich is. I've got a very simple formula for being rich. Rich, doing what you want to do, when you want to do it, and having the time and money to allow you to do it. That is rich. But that can apply to someone who's in a 9-to-5 job, right? They can actually take use of that analogy of being rich. and use it. So rich is different things to different people, and you must get out of your mind this big pile of money, because it's no good. As I said this morning when I'm out on my walk, the greatest pleasure that I've had today is standing by a river with 4 slices of dry bread feeding the swans and ducks. Now, anyone on earth can do that, but if you're all stressed and worried about life, you sit there, you just throw it to the swans, and it won't mean anything. But you've got to be relaxed and appreciate what's going on. See all the swans coming in, flying in, and the ducks, and the pigeons trying to nick it out of the air, and the seagulls and all that. And it's great. And you start noticing more things because you're more relaxed. You go there. So my pleasure today, right, has been standing by a riverside with 4 slices of bread. Now, if you tell a lot of people that, when you're up the pub with Bill, the bloke who knows everything, and tell him that you met a guy today who's got a few quid, but the best thing he did today was standing by a river with 4 slices of dry bread, he's going to laugh at you. But that's something else that you've got to do. Don't let the soothsayers, don't let the people knock you off your perch and say that you're daft. All this mumbo jumbo, this spiritual, this whatever. It's not. It's all common sense when you do it, because all you're doing is controlling situations. Wherever you are is where you believe you can be. And that's what we're trying to do with people. We say, hang on, you're better than that. And the minute that you start believing that you're something else, you go through the glass ceiling and you go, how long has all this been going on up here? Because you're at a new level. And then everything changes again. When you start getting hold of money, see, one of the worst things, and I'm going a little bit deep here for you, John, it might be a little bit advanced, but one of the worst things about getting hold of a fair bit of money is you've got to be careful about your friends. Because you can start challenging their pocket. You might say, oh, I've got a nice few quid, I'm going into this restaurant. And you know you normally go in and you all share the bill. Well, it might challenge your pocket. And all of a sudden, the next time you say, let's go out for a meal, guess what? They don't want to go. So, you know, getting hold of a substantial amount of money isn't the easiest thing in the world. You've really still got to start monitoring what's going on. And that's why you've got to derive your greatest pleasures from the world's easiest things. Relationships, friendships, you know, companionship, sharing, all these things, feeding ducks and swans, all these things.
Sunset.
Right, yeah, the sunset. So you derive your greatest pleasures from the natural things and the easiest things in the world. Money is a means of exchange, and it's great. I'd tell you what, I'd rather be with it than without it. And you all them people that tell you can only live in one bed and do all this, that and the other. It's great to have a few quid, but it can cause more problems than it solves. And you see, most people that are listening now have got to get a mindset of being able to cope with money. Because how many times have you heard of people that have won a vast amount of money, right? And then 2 or 3 years down the track, they're in a worse position than they were before they had it, because they haven't got the correct mindset. Because all of a sudden they lose their friends because they don't know how to handle the money. And one of the best ways to, like in a situation where you're going out with someone who is a friend and you want to take to somewhere that's exciting or different, offer to pay. But sometimes that backfires as well, because then they say he's a flash bastard. Oh, who do you think he is? So do you see, it's not trying to complicate things, but it is you've got to be able to juggle these things, And it's like, you've been here, you've been a guest in my house and all that, and I try and enjoy my money, okay? But some people come and they think I'm being flash. I'm not. I'm just trying to entertain and do the right thing. So it's a very fine line. So sometimes you're better to make your vision nothing to do with money, because money will come as a result of doing the right thing. Does that make sense?
Sure, having the actual gold or coins or pieces of paper, the experience, isn't it? That is what it's about. I think it worth repeating your definition of what real riches is.
Well, I always say to real wealth is to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, but have the time and money to allow you to do it. Because I know loads of people with loads of money, but no time.
Yeah.
Time.
All of a sudden then you realise that maybe you don't need to shoot for being a billionaire or 100 millions. That those four things are the... it reminds me of that story about the guy catching fish on his boat.
Yeah, well, I've got a video of that. You can give them that as well.
Right.
The story of that, yeah.
The story, of the guy catching the fish on his boat. Yeah.
And knowing where you want to be, heading for the bit, and then said, what do you want to do? And he wants to go right back to where he was when the bloke started trying to change it.
Yeah, right at the
Beautiful
beginning.
story.
Yeah.
So there's another little thing I'll give you, a little video there of that story all done on the thing with drawings and bits and pieces. So
fantastic work. Yeah. We'll put that
together.
together.
Another one. So
email in. We'll send you to that as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You mentioned about going down the pub and telling your mate who knows everything about, and them scoffing at something. Wallace talks about the fact that do not listen to, don't go to any lectures, don't read any media or stuff that promotes a contrary opinion to all these kind of things. And I see so many times people, for example, that they want to do something, write a book, or all of a sudden they start telling people about it. And then people go, oh, wow, that's amazing. You're amazing. Write a book. Wow, that's really... And all of a sudden, they're getting all the good feeling from having written a book, and they haven't actually done it yet. Because everybody they talk to is going, oh, that's amazing. I could never do that. Yeah. You're really amazing. Or you want to write this book. And they haven't actually put pen to paper yet. Yeah. It's almost like they're getting the adulation. The end result, the adulation from writing a book without having to do the work, and then it somehow loses the power of their actual idea. Whereas if they kept ideas that if they shared them with certain people, they would either get that adulation or they'd get derided. But to keep those,
but the thing is, you see, Wallace also says, don't buy in to things like the news, the information, because I think everyone must realise by now, and with social media and what have you now, the media is there to control you either one way or the other. And when I was living in Australia, it was very easy to avoid the newspapers because there was only one. And now, having more time on my hands, sort of because I'm taking it a lot easier these days, I walk past the paper shop in the morning and I buy a couple of newspapers, and I had someone contact me the other day because my Facebook account and all that, I started talking about Syria and the wrongs that were being done here, there and everywhere and all this sort of thing. And really and truly, I was getting consumed. I was a victim, really, of my own advocation. If I'm advocating don't read newspapers because they'll affect your mind, there am I reading, consuming all this, watching the news and doing that because my life's changed. But I can now tell you that if you can avoid the news and avoid the newspapers, it's a good thing to do. And I'm cutting back again now because it gives you so many things to think about that get you all excited and on your high horse, and then you go on to ring, talk back radio and have your opinion and all that sort of thing. And it's all just to control you. Whereas if your mind, you can't have a relaxed mind if you read the Daily Mail.
No.
Because that's the biggest agitator I've ever seen in my life. They're just trying to stir crap everywhere they can, So, leave all that information, because, John, if there's a bit of information where they're going to chop the right hand off every single person aged between 40 and 50 in the UK on Wednesday, guess what?
I'd find out about it.
You'll have enough phone calls telling you about it, all right? So anything that's relevant,
you know about,
you will know, and it will feed through to you.
I actually gave up television news and newspapers in 1992.
Yeah.
So that's now 21 years ago. Britain was at war with the Falklands or something,
Yeah.
and again, and I was worrying about things that never happened.
Yeah.
I was sitting there worrying about things in the future which turned out never happened and didn't go those way, which is what most stresses and worries are about, things that are in the future that just end up never normally happening that way, or as people worry about things in the past that you can't change. And that's not a positive conversation. That's not a conversation that gives anyone the impression of increase. It's not a conversation of you advancing. It's not a conversation of you keeping that vision in mind. Very, very soon noticed a change in my levels of happiness and just being more relaxed. And that worry and that anxiety disappeared. And like you say, I know who the Prime Minister of this country is. I know who the President of America is.
Yeah.
The big things, you can't miss them. But do I know all the details of them? And do I need to sit down and have somebody in a suit for an hour a day? Because most people don't even take 5 minutes to sit down and meditate a day, but they'll quite happily sit down in front of a hypnotic medium like a television with a TV newscaster telling them how it is and what they must think, and that's hypnosis, and that goes in, and they're never positive suggestions.
No, because you don't. Mrs. Smith finding her cat that was lost up a tree don't really turn many people on. And the funny thing is, neither does people winning vast amounts of money. People don't want to hear that. All they're doing when they're watching that, they're seeing someone win in the polls, is subliminally they're saying, I hope they lose a lot. Lucky bastard. So it's all confusing. But the funny thing is though, John, worrying does work. Because 99% of the things that people worry about never happen. So I don't know whether it's the worrying that's stopping it happening or what, but so look, bottom line is deal with things, right? There's another little Crozism here. When you are stressed and worried, you've only got to ask yourself 2 questions. A, have I done everything I can? B, is there anything else I can do? Now, if you answer yes, no to those 2 questions, sling it in the bin, which sounds totally irresponsible, doesn't it? But guess what? 90% of the time, it won't happen. If you haven't done everything you can to sort things out, you're an idiot. And if there's something else you can do and you're not going to do it, you're even more stupid. So if you've done everything you can and there's nothing else you can do, stop worrying, because you ain't going to make things any better. And then if it presents itself as a real problem, you will be given the tools to deal with it. But all the time that you are surmising what might happen, you get what we call circular thought. And you can't get off that circular thought for the simple reason that there's no solution. But when it's a real problem, guess what? There has to be a solution. You can either deal with it or you can't deal with it. But you've got a definitive answer when you're thinking about it. And the funny thing is as we said about our vision earlier on, and you start thinking about your holiday, you don't put all the horrible things in, do you? You don't put the possibility of rain, breaking your leg, or the car breaking down. You don't put them in it. But when you've actually got a problem, guess what you do? You put all the worst solutions in. You don't think of it of a good turnout, no, because that's impossible. That don't happen to people like me. So you don't put a good solution in. You just keep going round and round and round without a solution, and it drives you insane. So if you're stressed or got a problem, have I done everything I can? Is there anything else I can do? And if you answer yes, no to them 2 questions, sling it in the bin. Takes a bit of training, but then forget about it. And then if it presents itself as a real problem, you will be given the tools to deal with it. Trust me, I'm medically trained.
What advice then can you give somebody who is working for themselves, or somebody who's thinking about starting a source of income, another business alongside what they're currently doing?
Well, the biggest motivation of all has got to be that you're going to improve your situation above what you've got now. Now, I deal a lot with start-up businesses and young entrepreneurs, but a lot of people are in a better position working for a company if they do what we said earlier and change their attitude towards where they are, because the thing is, a business today, especially here, I mean, it's a bloody nightmare with all the bits and pieces you've got to do. So make sure, number one, it's what you want to do. Because if you can just change where you are, where you've got the protection of, you get holidays when you want it, you go, you end at 5 o'clock, you do that, because in small business, you sometimes work 80 hours to prevent you going to a job where you work 40 and get looked after. So you've got to be sure that you want to do it. Once you've established that you do want to do it, then the best thing to do is to find something that you really, really want to do. Because if you're going to do a job purely and simply to generate money, it will very, very soon lose its shine. And all of a sudden, you'll be in the same position as if you're in a job that you don't like. You'll now be in a position that you're not very happy, where you've got no one supporting you, and no one coming to say, oh, well, look, go home, it's 5 o'clock. You might have to work all through the night on a problem or a situation. So you've got to make sure that you've got a goal, clarity about what you want to achieve, right? There is no, you can have a business plan, but I've never known one that's stood the test of time. It always changes, so be flexible. Banks insist if you want to go, you can't borrow money. Today the banks are too frightened to lend any money, so it's hard. But make sure that you know where you want to go, okay? Make sure, and banks say they want a plan. That's crap. You can't say what's going to happen. In an ideal world, yeah, we do that, we sell that amount, then the next year we do this, and the next year we project that, and this. Rubbish. You've got to just, once again, as I said earlier, deal with things as they turn up. So you've got to know where you want to go, and you've got to ignite the blue touch paper here, and then be prepared to be flexible and deal with things as they happen. It's impossible to say what's going to happen. It's absolutely impossible. You don't know. So that's a good thing, is to make sure that you want to do what you're going to do. The rest of it, if you're in the service industry, make sure that you go above and beyond the call of duty, because it's a tough world out there. But someone will always talk about the good that you do. But you know what? They'll talk more about the bad that you do. If you do something good, one person will maybe tell 11 people. You do something bad, 11 people will tell 100,000 people. They won't be able to stop talking. So make sure that you do everything that you possibly can. It's like on these online selling things now. They have these feedback for how you've looked after your customers, eBay and all that. And people would do anything. I bought some wheels for a car the other day off eBay, and there was a little thing come through. Please, if there's anything wrong, please make sure that you tell me before you comment to eBay and all this. So it's funny, that's evolution now, that it's now an integral part of doing business online is to be honest and honourable. Otherwise, people won't deal with you. So it's really brought a very old, tried and tested thing to light in a big way. And someone who gets downgraded by eBay or Gumtree or any of these other things, all of a sudden they can't. Their business is ruined. So they're actually insisting that you do what you should be doing anyway, and that's do the right thing by the people. If you're selling something, describe it. Describe it correctly, because they're going to be blind to not see it. So you're better off to put it in your advert, because then they say, oh, he's being honest. And when you get the set of wheels and there's a mark on it, but there's nothing you can say because it was already in the information. So it's evolution once again. It's funny how things work, you know. I mean, we were talking earlier about having the kids on their little machines in the back of the car, and we go, that's ridiculous. We used to play I Spy and all that, but the thing is, we didn't have them. I mean, that was lovely. The other day I was doing a talk, and the woman stood up, and I was talking about young entrepreneurs and kids' education and what have you, and the woman stood up and she said, when I was young, my parents didn't drive me to school. I said, madam, how old are you? She said, 65. I said, yeah. I said, well, the odds are that your parents didn't have a car. They didn't, but that don't matter. I said, well, they didn't have the choice, did they? So you can't actually, you've got to move with what's going on in the world. You can't sort of live in the past and say what we did then was right. And we say, mobile phones. We didn't have them. So we can't comment on what we would have done then. It's irrelevant. You've got to deal with what's happening now. So that's in business, make sure that your ideas are up to date and you're not dealing with now. I mean, on the internet now, if things are moving so fast, in society today, you say something can't be done, you're more likely standing next door to someone who's doing it. That's how quick things are happening. So just some little simple things is with regards, you know, self-employment. It ain't the place that it used to be. It is difficult, but it's not impossible, providing that you've got that goal firmly set and it's something that you really want. And if you're doing it just for money, the first hiccup you have, the first failure you have, you won't have anything to pull you up. A vision is that helps you up because you believe that you're going to get to where you want to be, and that's the thing that gets you up when you fall over. So if you're doing it for money and you haven't got the love and what have you, the best thing is not start, just stay where you are and make the best of where you are. And sometimes why don't you work on where you are more than fill your space and see what happens? Wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, I in 1989 took a business plan to the bank and projected cash and forecasts and set up my first little business, and it was just purely to make some money. And I hit a couple of hurdles, and well, you've never heard of that company, never heard of that business.
Yeah.
It didn't go anywhere. I didn't have, like you say, that vision behind it. I didn't have, I just simply wanted to make some money extra to what I was doing, and it didn't work. It went nowhere.
So the proof of the pudding. So once again, we're coming right back to where we started, and that's that vision. Desire, that vision, that goal is so important, because then that you're on the right track. And anyone listening to this who hasn't got a vision of where they're going, it doesn't matter if you work in a company, right? It doesn't matter where you are, you should always have a vision of where you want to be. And the thing is, a lot of people say, I've had some ups and downs in my life, and I've had a few really big downs, don't worry about that. And the last thing that I wanted to hear when I had the seat of my trousers hanging out and no money was, imagine a lovely mansion overlooking San Francisco Bay, and you've got a lovely Rolex watch on your hand, and there's boats going by the harbour, and the biggest one in the harbour is the one that you own. And I look round and I go, hang on a minute, mate, can you tell me how to get a bit of grub in my stomach? So the vision, you've got to make it believable and relevant. And that's something I've learned. All these people that try and spin this, you can have what you want, you can do what you want. There's nothing wrong with bringing a vision back a little bit nearer to something that, always make it a stretch. Because if you make a goal that you can achieve, it ain't a goal, is it? It's something, I'll do this and this, and then I'll reach my goal. No, make it a stretch. But don't make it such a stretch that you don't believe it. because your belief and faith in achieving it is the actual secret. If you make a vision that and you might say you believe it, but deep down you don't, because them little voices will let you know, John. They'll come creeping up and they go, "Oi, John, don't be stupid. You're old John Vincent from the wrong side of the bloody track. What are you doing dreaming about big houses and this, that and the other?" So you've got to make it believable. But knowing what we know, there ain't nothing that's too big for your vision, because the universe, or whatever actually gives us all this, don't know the difference between light and dark, heavy and light, expensive or cheap. It's to that, it's, it doesn't matter. So nothing should be restricted, but you must believe. And if you don't believe, bring it back a little bit. Go to the very, very limits of what you know you can do, and then just add a little bit on. But make sure that it's something that you want. Right? There's no use. You're never ever going to believe or want something that you don't want. And the funny thing is, lots and lots of people that with lots and lots of money, right, ain't happy. So having a big house doesn't necessarily make you happy. I mean, I've just downsized from a huge 10-acre farm with a big house on it to a little 2-bedroom place here by the river. But I'm happy. I've got no aspirations to live in the bigger house, because what I need at the moment is what I need at the moment. So my vision was to come to the UK and buy a quirky 2-bedroom house, which is exactly what I've ended up with, because I was clear about what I wanted. But the fact that I've gone into a 2-bedroom house hasn't made me feel like I failed, because why do I want a big house at my stage of life? I just making me smaller place as comfortable and as nice as possible, and that's it. So my vision really was downgrading. So the vision can go both ways. Really, you might actually have a point in your life where you was much happier, and that might be the way to go. I was talking to a guy the other day. He come round here. He has got a huge place, 26 acres. Huge place. If they ever film James Bond in England, that is the house they'll use as some set. It's absolutely beautiful. He come round and he said, "This is what I want. This is the sort of place I want." So his vision, really, but he's got to keep a big one on. He's got to keep big noting himself, because he's in those circles of people. But he ain't happy with it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So sometimes a vision can be pulling you back to a time of your life, like our friend again in the story. Going and buying all the fishing, building up, getting hold of millions of dollars. And then now you've got all this money, what do you want to do? I want to go back and start fishing on the beach again. So sometimes you can look back for a vision to a time when you were happier. A time when, because it's all about that, as I said, peace of mind and happiness, isn't it, at the end of the day?
A huge thank you to Croz for his time and insight. The interview got cut there due to a technical issue 10 years ago. I hope you've enjoyed this interview and got as much out of it as I did. Thank you again to Croz.